Hello everyone. Welcome to the video series on FMEA, that is failure modes and effect analysis. As we know that FMEA is a tool used to identify the failure modes of any product or system that can occur during its use and provide a countermeasure during the development stage itself so that the failure does not occur when the product is being used. So this video series is mainly focused to identify the failure modes and practice the FMEA with the help of an example. So let us see what we will discuss in these videos. So regarding the contents of this video series, the main contents are failure modes. We will discuss what are failure modes, how do we quantify them to get the severity, and what should be the possible countermeasures for these failures. And then we will see the actual FMEA worksheet, how the FMEA worksheet is designed and how we can use it for our better product. And then we will practice FMEA using an imaginary automatic sliding door system. This is just to understand how FMEA is actually done. So let us get started with the first topic, that is the failure modes. So the term failure mode refers to a state of the system where the performance of the system is not acceptable or the performance degrades below the actual level. And this failure mode is identified before the development of the system so that the appropriate countermeasures can be taken. So, in short, identification of failure mode is the first step that we need to perform in an FMEA analysis. Once the failure modes are identified, then we need to quantify the failure modes to get out the severity of the each failure. So basically, each failure can impact the system in different ways. And the failures which has a severe impact or which occur at a regular basis needs to be catered during the design phase. And the countermeasure or basically the product design should be such that these failure modes can be avoided once the product is developed. So in order to study the failure modes, we need to quantify the failure modes so that we can have an idea how severe the failure mode is. So the next part is the quantification of this failure mode. Let us go to the next part. So in order to quantify and prioritize the failure modes, we assign three parameters: severity, frequency, and detection to each failure mode, and we calculate the final RPN, that is risk priority number, based on these three parameters. So first let us understand these parameters. The first one is severity. Severity refers to the seriousness of the impact which the failure mode can have on the product and the user. The rating starts from 1 and goes up to 10, with 10 being the most dangerous, and 1 refers to the impact which may not be noticed by the user. The second parameter is the frequency. This is related to the likelihood of the failure to occur in the system, with 1 being the very less or a very rare chance of this failure mode to occur, and 10 means the failure mode is very frequent and can occur whenever the system is being used or even at idle. The third parameter is of detection. This refers to the detectability of the failure mode. Like if the failure mode has occurred, then can our system detect that okay, this failure mode has occurred, or it is not possible for the system to detect this failure, and this failure can directly impact the user and the system. So this detection is an important parameter, same as frequency and severity. And the rating also goes from 1 to 10, with 10 having the highest impact, like it cannot be detected and it will directly go to the user. And 1 is that it can be detected almost every time when it is occurring. So once we have allotted these numbers, these ratings to the failure mode of severity, frequency, and detection, we will calculate the risk priority number, that is RPN, associated with each failure mode. And based on the number of RPN, we can see what failure modes needs to be catered and which failure modes needs to have a design countermeasure so that the failure does not reach the user. Now, it is important to understand that these ratings uh, are based on the judgment of the user, and mostly system development team has their own scale to impart these ratings. Like the severity can be defined in different ways by different users. The frequency and detection can have the same meaning, can be defined differently by different organizations. So it is basically our perception how important it is for us to safeguard and what are the possible scenarios which we want to avoid. And based on these ratings are given. And after these ratings, the calculation of risk priority number is performed. And once the RPN is determined for all the failure modes, we have a minimum threshold, after which the failure modes RPN is not acceptable. For example, if the RPN of the failure mode is 100 and in our design we have the tolerance till 60 only, then we will implement the countermeasures which will decrease the rating of the severity, frequency, and detection till the RPN becomes less than 60 or whatever the acceptable threshold is. Once the RPN and the severity, frequency, and detection are within acceptable limits, we say, okay, then this design can be implemented and the development of the product begins. Until on the RPN for each the failure mode is within the limit, we keep implementing the countermeasures to bring the RPN down. So this was about the quantification and the way we use to quantify. Now let us check about the summary of this video. So to summarize about the failure mode is an event which can deteriorate the performance of the system. Identification of failure mode is one of the first steps that we performed while performing FMEA on any system. Once the failure modes are identified, we assign the severity, detection, and frequency to each of the failure modes, and then the RPN of the failure mode is calculated. Once the RPN of all the failure modes are within the acceptable limits, we can conclude that okay, the design is acceptable and the further development related processes are carried out. So this was about the summary of failure modes. In next video, we will check the FMEA worksheet and practice it.